Emma took a deep breath as she stepped into the grocery store, gripping her worn-out purse a little tighter. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow on the aisles lined with neatly arranged products. The air carried the familiar scent of fresh bread and coffee, mixing with the faint hint of cleaning detergent. Her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, held her hand. Her small fingers curled around Emma's as they walked toward the produce section. "Mommy, can we get apples this time?" Lily asked, her big brown eyes filled with hope. Emma smiled softly. "Let's see, sweetheart," she said, mentally calculating how much she could afford. Every dollar counted, and she had to be careful. She had been living paycheck to paycheck ever since her ex-husband walked out on them. Raising a child alone was hard, but she never let Lily feel the burden. Emma worked long hours as a receptionist at a small dental clinic, but even with tips, the money barely stretched far enough. As she picked up a bag of apples, she hesitated. It was a little over her budget. She sighed and placed it back, opting for a smaller bag with fewer apples. Lily noticed and didn't complain. She was used to this dance, watching her mother carefully weigh choices, making silent sacrifices. Just as Emma moved to the next aisle, a tall, impeccably dressed woman breezed past them, the sharp click of her designer heels echoing through the store. She wore a tailored white coat over a chic black dress, her gold jewelry catching the bright store lights. Her long, manicured nails tapped impatiently against the handle of her shopping cart, which was filled with gourmet cheeses, exotic fruits, and imported chocolates. Emma didn't notice her at first, too focused on checking prices. But as she reached for a carton of milk, she heard a scoffing noise behind her. "Oh, look at this." The woman's voice was smooth but laced with condescension. "She's actually counting pennies." Emma turned slightly, locking eyes with the woman's icy blue gaze. Vanessa Kensington. Emma recognized her immediately. Vanessa was a well-known socialite in town, famous for her extravagant lifestyle and sharp tongue. She was married to a wealthy businessman and had never known a day of struggle in her life. Emma forced a polite smile, ignoring the way Vanessa's lips curled in amusement. She turned back to her shopping, willing herself to stay calm. "Honestly, if you can't afford groceries, why even come to a place like this?" Vanessa continued, loud enough for nearby shoppers to hear. A few turned their heads, curiosity flickering in their expressions. Emma's hands tightened around the milk carton, but she didn't respond. She had learned long ago that people like Vanessa weren't worth engaging with. Lily, however, was too young to understand that silence was sometimes the best answer. "Mommy works very hard," she said, her voice small but defiant. "She takes care of me all by herself." Vanessa let out a light, mocking laugh. "Oh, how touching," she said, placing an expensive jar of imported honey into her cart. "Let me guess, you're one of those women who made bad choices and now expects sympathy." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she remained composed. "I don't expect anything from you," she said calmly. Vanessa arched an eyebrow. "Oh, honey, I wasn't offering." She then glanced down at Lily, smirking. "Poor thing. I suppose she'll grow up the same way, struggling, always wanting what she can't have." Emma felt something inside her snap, but before she could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Emma turned to see a tall man in his 60s standing nearby. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, and though he wore simple slacks and a button-down shirt, there was something commanding about him. His piercing gray eyes scanned the situation with quiet authority. Vanessa's demeanor shifted instantly. She straightened her posture, adjusting the designer scarf around her neck. "Oh, no problem at all," she said with a fake smile. "I was just giving some friendly advice." The man wasn't convinced. His gaze lingered on Vanessa for a moment before he turned to Emma and Lily, his expression softening. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Emma nodded, though she felt rattled. "Yes, thank you." The man looked at Lily, then at Emma again. There was something in his eyes, recognition, perhaps. Vanessa, sensing that the conversation was slipping away from her, scoffed. "Well, if you'll excuse me, I have better things to do than waste my time here." She turned on her heel and strode toward the checkout line, her high-end heels clicking against the tile floor. Emma let out a slow breath, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. The man gave her a reassuring nod. "Some people think money makes them better than others," he said. "But character always shows in moments like these." Emma smiled gratefully. "I appreciate that." The man nodded and glanced at the checkout line. "Why don't you go ahead? I'll take care of things here." Emma frowned in confusion. "I what?" But before she could protest, the man had already stepped forward, motioning to the cashier. What happened next would change everything. Emma stood frozen for a moment, her fingers tightening around the handle of her shopping cart as she processed the stranger's words. "Go ahead," the man repeated, giving her a reassuring nod. "I'll take care of things here." Emma hesitated, unsure whether to accept his offer. Acts of kindness were rare in her world, and she had learned to rely on no one but herself. "Sir, that's really not necessary," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I can manage." The man gave her a gentle smile. "I don't doubt that you can, but everyone could use a little help now and then." Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, maybe we can get the apples?" she whispered, hope flickering in her wide eyes. Emma swallowed hard, torn between pride and practicality. Finally, she exhaled. "All right," she said softly. "Thank you." As they moved toward the checkout line, Emma could feel the weight of the earlier encounter still pressing against her chest. Vanessa stood a few feet ahead, her expensive items being scanned by the cashier. She hadn't spared another glance at Emma, too preoccupied with her phone and dismissing the grocery store employee as if they were beneath her. Emma unloaded her modest groceries onto the belt, carefully placing each item while keeping an eye on the price. The older man stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching calmly. The cashier, a teenage girl with tired eyes, scanned Emma's items with efficiency. But as the total appeared on the screen, Emma's heart sank. She was a few dollars short. She bit her lip, quickly scanning the items and deciding what she could put back. "The milk," she murmured, reaching for it. "I can do without it." Before she could remove it, a firm but gentle hand stopped her. The older man shook his head. "You won't be putting anything back," he said, placing his credit card on the machine. "It's all taken care of." Emma's eyes widened. "No, really, I consider it a small act of kindness," he said, his expression warm but resolute. Emma felt her throat tighten. She wanted to argue, but something about the way he spoke, the way he carried himself, made her pause. There was no condescension in his tone, no pity, only a quiet generosity. Lily grinned. "Mommy, we can keep the apples." Emma let out a soft laugh, a mix of relief and gratitude washing over her. "Yes, sweetheart, we can." She turned back to the man. "Thank you. Really." Before he could respond, a sharp voice cut through the moment. "You've got to be kidding me." Emma turned to see Vanessa standing nearby, her arms crossed, an incredulous expression on her face. "Are you seriously paying for her groceries?" she scoffed, directing her glare at the older man. "This is exactly what's wrong with people today. Handouts. No wonder people like her never get anywhere." Emma felt her stomach twist, but before she could respond, the man chuckled, a quiet, knowing sound. "You seem very invested in this, Miss Kensington," he said smoothly. Vanessa blinked. "You? How do you know my name?" The man smiled slightly. "I know a lot of things." Vanessa's posture stiffened. "Listen, I don't know what kind of hero complex you have, but trust me, you're wasting your time. Women like her will always be struggling, always looking for someone to bail them out." She eyed Emma like she was something beneath her. "Let me guess. No husband, no career, just scraping by and expecting sympathy." Lily's small hand tightened around Emma's. "Mommy works very hard," she said again, her little voice filled with quiet strength. The man's expression darkened just a fraction. "Yes, she does," he said. Then he turned back to Vanessa. "And I find it interesting that you assume generosity is wasted on someone like her." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Spare me the lecture. I was just making an observation. She tossed her bag over her shoulder and waved a manicured hand dismissively. Do what you want. It's your money to waste. She turned to leave, but the man's next words made her freeze in place. Indeed it is, he said. And as the owner of this grocery store chain, I believe I can spend it however I see fit. Silence. Vanessa stopped mid-stride, her entire body going rigid. Slowly, she turned back to face him. You what? She stammered. Emma's eyes widened in surprise. You own this store? The man nodded, a small amused smile tugging at his lips. Among others. Vanessa's expression crumbled for a split second before she recovered, forcing a tight, unconvincing smile. Oh, well, I didn't realize. You didn't care, the man corrected. You assumed you were above others simply because of what you have. But let me tell you something, Miss Kensington. Wealth means nothing without character. Vanessa's face flushed red. I don't need a lecture from some businessman playing charity. The man raised an eyebrow. Perhaps not. But I do have a say in the kind of customers and attitudes we tolerate in my stores. Vanessa's breath caught. You wouldn't. I won't have to, he said simply. Because I trust that, after today, you'll think twice before humiliating another person in public. Vanessa's lips pressed together, fury and embarrassment battling for dominance on her face. Then, without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed out of the store. Silence stretched between Emma and the man for a moment before Lily's voice broke it. She was really mean. The man chuckled. Yes, she was. Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I still don't know how to thank you. You already have, he said warmly, by proving that kindness still matters. As they finished checking out, Emma felt something shift inside her. She had spent so long struggling, expecting nothing from the world but hardship. But today, someone had reminded her that there were still good people out there. People who didn't just see her as another statistic, another struggling single mom. As she and Lily walked out of the store, groceries in hand, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. Emma and Lily walked out of the store with their bags of groceries, but Emma's mind was still racing. She clutched the paper bags tightly, her heart pounding as she replayed the events inside. The man, who was he really? He had spoken with such quiet authority, and the way Vanessa had reacted to his words told Emma that he was someone important. She turned to look at him once more through the glass doors of the store. He was speaking with the cashier now, his posture calm yet commanding. There was something about him, something familiar. Mommy? Lily's small voice broke through her thoughts. Who was that nice man? Emma smiled down at her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm not sure, sweetheart, but I think we're about to find out. Just as she said that, the man stepped out of the store and approached them. Miss, he called out, his deep voice steady. May I have a moment? Emma nodded, though she still felt wary. Of course. He extended a hand. James Whitmore. Her breath caught in her throat. James Whitmore. The name wasn't just familiar, it was legendary. James Whitmore was one of the most influential businessmen in the state. He owned multiple grocery chains, real estate developments, and had a reputation for philanthropy. He was a self-made billionaire, a man who had built an empire from the ground up, and he had just paid for her groceries. Emma hesitated before shaking his hand. I know who you are, she admitted. James chuckled, his eyes twinkling. I thought you might. Emma's mind reeled. Why would a man like him take interest in her situation? You might not remember me, James continued, studying her expression. But I remember you. Emma blinked. Remember me? James nodded. Years ago, when I was first starting out, I wasn't the man you see today. I was a struggling businessman trying to keep my first store afloat. I had a small team of employees, and one of them was a young woman who always went the extra mile, who worked hard, was kind to customers, and never complained, no matter how tough things got. Emma's breath hitched. A memory surfaced, her first job when she was just 19, working in a small grocery store before she went to college. James smiled. You were that employee, Emma. Emma's eyes widened. She had worked at a small grocery store during her first year of college, before life had taken unexpected turns. Could it really be the same place? I always remembered you, James said, because when I was struggling to make ends meet, you once covered for me. Emma frowned. I did. James nodded. There was a day when I was late delivering stock and a customer got upset. You handled the situation with such grace, diffusing their anger and making them feel valued. It was a small moment, but it stuck with me. I knew then that I had a good person on my team. I wanted to offer you a promotion, but one day, you were gone. Emma swallowed hard. She remembered that day too. She had to leave the job suddenly when her mother fell sick, forcing her to take care of the household while juggling her studies. Eventually, she dropped out of college altogether, and life never quite went the way she had planned. You left before I could thank you, James continued, and I never forgot that. Emma felt a lump in her throat. I never thought anyone noticed. James chuckled. Good people often go unnoticed, Emma, but they shouldn't. Emma looked down at Lily, who was holding onto her hand tightly, her eyes wide with wonder. James smiled warmly. I'm in a position now where I can do more than just say, thank you. I'd like to offer you something. An opportunity. Emma's heart skipped a beat. An opportunity? James nodded. I have a corporate office not far from here. We're looking for an administrative manager. Someone with experience in handling operations, working with people, and making a workplace run smoothly. I think you'd be perfect for it. Emma felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. A real job, not just a paycheck-to-paycheck struggle, but something stable, something that could truly change her and Lily's future. But why me? She asked, still in disbelief. James' expression softened. Because you deserve it. Because I believe in second chances. And because I know you'll do a damn good job. Emma's eyes welled up. She had spent so many years thinking she had been forgotten by the world, that her struggles didn't matter. But standing in front of her was a man who had remembered, who had seen her when no one else had. She glanced at Lily, who was beaming. Mommy, you should say yes. Emma let out a shaky laugh, wiping away a tear. Okay, she whispered. Yes. James grinned. Good choice. As they shook hands again, Emma realized something profound. Sometimes kindness had a way of coming back to you in the most unexpected ways. Emma sat at her tiny kitchen table that night, the dim glow of the old ceiling light casting a soft reflection on the worn wooden surface. Her groceries were unpacked, Lily happily munching on an apple, one of the very apples she thought they wouldn't be able to afford just hours ago. Everything felt surreal. The encounter at the grocery store, the humiliation from Vanessa, and then James Whitmore. His words echoed in her mind. Good people often go unnoticed, but they shouldn't. She had spent years believing she was invisible, just another struggling single mom in an unforgiving world. But now, someone had seen her. Someone had given her a chance. She reached for the business card James had given her and traced her fingers over his name. James Whitmore, CEO. The opportunity he had offered her was real. Tomorrow morning, she would walk into his office and begin the next chapter of her life. Mommy, Lily's small voice pulled her from her thoughts. Emma looked up. Yes, sweetheart. Are you happy? The question caught her off guard. Happy? She wasn't sure if she had truly felt happy in a long time. Relief, yes. Determination, definitely. But happiness? She looked at Lily, at her innocent, hopeful eyes. And for the first time in a long time, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were finally turning around. She smiled, reaching out to tuck a strand of Lily's golden hair behind her ear. Yes, baby, I think I am. The next morning, Emma stood outside the Whitmore corporate office, nerves twisting in her stomach. The building was sleek and modern, the large glass windows reflecting the morning sunlight. She adjusted the blazer she had borrowed from a neighbor, making sure she looked as professional as possible. The butterflies in her stomach fluttered wildly, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. She had come so far. She wasn't about to let doubt ruin this opportunity. Ms. Carter, Emma turned to see a well-dressed woman with a kind smile approaching her. "I'm Sarah, Mr. Whitmore's assistant. He's expecting you." Emma nodded. "Thank you." As Sarah led her through the building, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This was a world she had never been part of. High ceilings, elegant decor, employees dressed in crisp suits, moving with purpose. She was used to small offices with broken printers and coffee-stained desks. But she wouldn't let that intimidate her. Sarah stopped in front of a large mahogany door and knocked. "Come in," a familiar voice called. Emma stepped inside, and there he was, James Whitmore, standing by the window looking out over the city. He turned, a warm smile on his face. "Emma," he greeted, extending a hand. "Glad you made it." Emma shook his hand, feeling a little more confident than yesterday. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Whitmore. Please call me James." He gestured to a seat. "Have a seat. Let's talk about your future." She sat, hands folded in her lap as James leaned forward, his expression serious but kind. "I won't lie to you, Emma. This job won't be easy," he said. "But I believe you have what it takes to succeed here." Emma nodded. "I won't let you down." James studied her for a moment, then smiled. "I know you won't." And just like that, Emma Carter, once a struggling single mother counting pennies in a grocery store, became the newest member of Whitmore Enterprises. 2 weeks later, Emma found herself in the grocery store again, this time with confidence in her stride. She picked up items without second-guessing if she could afford them. She wasn't rich, not yet, but she wasn't drowning anymore. As she reached for a box of cereal, she heard a familiar voice. "Oh, how the tables have turned." Emma turned to see Vanessa Kensington standing a few feet away. But something was different. Gone was the haughty arrogance, the dismissive smirk. Instead, Vanessa looked uncomfortable. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Vanessa let out a stiff laugh, gesturing toward the items in Emma's cart. "New job treating you well, I see." Emma tilted her head. "I suppose it is." Vanessa exhaled sharply. "Look, about what happened last time. Maybe I was a little harsh." Emma crossed her arms. "A little?" Vanessa pursed her lips. "Fine. A lot." Emma simply stared, waiting. Vanessa sighed. "All right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way." Emma studied her, searching for any insincerity. But for once, Vanessa seemed genuine. Emma nodded. "Apology accepted." Vanessa blinked. "Really?" Emma shrugged. "I don't have time to hold on to grudges, Vanessa. I've got a life to build." Vanessa looked as if she wanted to say more, but simply nodded. "Well, good luck, I guess." Emma smiled. "You too." As Vanessa walked away, Emma felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Not from revenge, but from growth. She had risen above the pettiness, the cruelty. She had won. And as she walked to the checkout line, hand in hand with Lily, she knew that this was just the beginning.